I am speaking today with my friend Maestro Stanley Sperber, one of Israel's preeminent conductors. All right, so you moved to Israel in the early 70s. What was your
Yes.
motivation?
Well, what happened was in 1970, when we came to the Zimri a second time, we were invited to sing with the Israel Philharmonic in Beethoven's Ninth. And my gang learned the whole piece by memory. Uh, because I mean, it was singing with the Philharmonic and with Zubin Mehta. And Zubin, and there was Israeli choirs there as well. Zubin was saying to the Israelis, "What's the matter with you people? The American kids are watching me all the time, and you guys are in the music." And he was complaining all the time. One of the choirs was the Philharmonic Choir, and Ruth Zohar, who was the manager, contacted me when I got back to the States, and she said, "Look, we're not really very much appreciated here. Would you come and direct us?" So we made an agreement that I would come direct them in 1971. And just before I was coming to Israel, I got a call from her saying, "I'm sorry, but Zubin Mehta asked me to delay your appointment because it turns out that Joe Friedlander was the conductor of the Philharmonic Choir, and he was a close friend of Zubin's. And Zubin decided to give him another year to improve the choir. And so I had to go back and try to get rehired by my choirs, which I did successfully with Zamir, but not with a couple of the other ones. And then the following year, I was invited a second time to conduct the Philharmonic Choir when I really never had a first time.
Well, you must have had some challenges making this transition, language, cultural, with any resistance from the singers that you had and later the players in the orchestra?
Well, actually, since I was brought up in an Orthodox home and I was a student for 17 years at the Yeshiva of Flatbush, I spoke Hebrew. So when I came to Israel, I just had to learn how to curse. Uh,
Right,
Actually,
the technical language.
yeah, yeah. And of course, I the interesting thing is I never was able to develop an Israeli accent. You have a much better one than I do, but even yours is not perfect. And I would have thought that with my musical ear, it would work that I would be able to say resh, but I couldn't. And so, for example, when my son was born and my wife asked me what I thought we should do for a name, I said, any name that you want, just without a resh. So we called him Noam.
That works.
That worked, yeah. But
You,
as far as getting uh, assimilated, shall we say, into the culture, that really was not much of a problem. Since I already was conducting the Philharmonic Choir from the very first day, and my wife to be was the accompanist, uh, Ricky, who you know. Unfortunately, she passed away in '87. Uh, uh, and most of my acquaintances and my friends were Israeli, and very soon thereafter, I started conducting the Rinat Choir as well, and then the Academy Choir, and so I had no time not to assimilate into Israeli culture. I was totally involved, rehearsing virtually every night of the week.
Now, in your book, Between the Lines, available from Amazon,
Thank
you
you.
tell some stories of some very interesting guest conductors and soloists that you've worked with. What stands out? Give us some samples. You
Wow.
might even sell the book.
Yeah, what stands out? Oh my Lord, so many stories. There was Eliyahu Baal, the Israeli conductor who was supposed to conduct Elijah in 1979, and 2 weeks before that, the manager of the Israel of the Jerusalem Symphony contacted me and asked me if I would replace him because they were having a contractual debate in Baal at the last minute. Uh, Actually, this is not even in the book, so this is This is just
Bonus.
this is a premiere. Ball apparently demanded a couple more plane tickets. And so Fickler, the manager, refused and asked me if I would conduct it. And I had the great fortune of conducting with Benjamin Luxon, who I believe was the greatest Elijah of the 20th century. So yeah, that was quite an experience. I prepared the Cottage Symphony for Bernstein, and he I mean, it was such a privilege to work with him because I also got to prepare a whole bunch of other stuff with him, including Beethoven's Choral Fantasy and and other pieces. And I did get to know him even on a Lenny Stanley basis, which was great. I'll jump for 1 minute um, to a music festival in Germany where I took the Renat Choir, and Lenny was conducting in the same festival at the same time in a different location, Haydn's Creation. And so afterwards, I went over, and he didn't know I was there. I was with the Renat Choir, and he said, "Stanley, what are you doing here?" And I said, "I, I'm conducting Renat Choir." And he was signing autographs, and he opened up my jacket and signed his name all across my shirt. But in that first project that I prepared for him, the Cottage Symphony, he came in. Lenny had a couple of, shall we say, problems. One of them was he drank a bit, and he came into the rehearsal a bit soused. I could smell it on his breath, and he came in with a blank score of Kaddish, and apparently he had not seen it in a while. And he started with the last movement, which, as you know, is very tricky. It jumps around from 4/3 to 3/4 to 5/8 to all that stuff. And he started conducting, and he got lost. And he started again, and he got lost again. And he said to the choirs, "We're going to take a break. I want to see Stanley in the next room." I went into the next room with him, and he says to me, "How the hell do you conduct this movement?" And I said, "Lenny, you wrote this. You wrote the piece." He said, "I know I wrote the piece, but I'm stuck." I said to him, "Okay." He said, "Let's go." So I said, the 7/8, I do 2, 2, and 3, and the 9, 16. He said, "Wait a minute, let me write this down." And he took a pencil, and there I am teaching Lenny Bernstein how to conduct the Cottage Symphony. 3 days later, he conducted the whole piece by memory with the Philharmonic Orchestra. But that was an incredible first meeting with the great Bernstein.
So you made a switch from choral conducting to orchestral conducting. Obviously, you've done many
Well,
pieces
not
with both
really, Josh,
choir and
because
orchestra.
my first 13 years, I was conducting 3 choirs: the Jerusalem Academy Choir, Renat Choir, and the Philharmonic Choir. And I was guest conducting
Right.
the Jerusalem Symphony. And only in '85 was I offered the music directorship of the Haifa Orchestra. So, and then I concentrated 15 years with orchestral conducting, both in Haifa and also guest conducting in other places in Europe and in the United States.
What was that transition like from being primarily a choral person to primarily orchestral, doing many works without chorus?
Well, that's a very interesting question because it was for me quite traumatic. Not so much in the technical sense, but I had been working all my life with choirs, and who better than you know how fired up a choir can get, a non-professional one especially. They look forward to so much to the rehearsals, and they give everything they can, and they're so excited by the music. And then gradually, as I advanced in my career and I was working with more and more professional groups, such as the Haifa Orchestra, I was stunned to see that these people really didn't like music that much because for reasons that were easily understandable. They were being paid a paltry sum, and they had to go from the rehearsal to a second job. Some of them were working in pizza parlors. Some of them were cleaning homes. And then they would go home and have dinner and come back to play a concert. And the following morning, they showed up again to rehearsal. So it was no wonder that they were bitter because, having studied so many years in their instrument, finding themselves in the third or fourth stand of the second violin section and earning a very, very small sum, they were not overjoyed to be there. And for me, it was a shock to be working with people who were not as excited about making music as I had experienced my whole professional life until then. So that was a tough adjustment to make. As far as the conducting was concerned, since I had been doing a good deal of orchestral conducting, especially in my very first year, I'm sure you remember the tragic case when Istvan Kertész drowned in the beginning of a series of concerts with the Haydn Lord Nelson Mass, and I prepared it for him. So I got to conduct Israel Philharmonic already in 1973, and after that happened, the other orchestras invited me to guest conduct the Israel Chamber Orchestra, the Jerusalem Symphony, the Haifa Orchestra. So by the time I got the position in Haifa, I had a good deal of experience. And also at Juilliard, I did study orchestral conducting with Jean Morel at the same time that I was studying choral conducting with Abraham Kaplan, a name that you know.
Oh